Autumn had wrapped New York in its cold evenings and the rustling of leaves underfoot. I stared out the window at the darkening city when Adam unexpectedly interrupted my thoughts. We sat on the couch in our cozy Manhattan apartment, wrapped in a blanket, enjoying the silence. His face was focused, with a hint of inner tension in his eyes. "Adam, is something wrong?" I asked Adam. "Adam, is something wrong?" Ing that his silence was hiding something important, he took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts, and then seemed to exhale. His idea. "Kate, I want to discuss something with you. It might sound strange, but I want you to try being with another man while I watched." "Adam, is something wrong?" Ing, that is silent, imagining what he meant. His words, so unusual and unexpected, stir a storm of emotions within me. At first, I felt shock, then confusion, and finally, a slight tinge of fear. "Adam, are you serious?" I tried to grasp what was behind his words. Maybe this was some kind of strange joke. "Absolutely," he replied. Firmly, "I've been thinking about it for a while. I feel like this could strengthen our bond, bring something new to our relationship. I want us to experience something that might take us to a new level." I felt a growing anxiety in my chest. The idea seemed strange, even wrong. How could our relationship was built on honesty and openness? This proposal seemed to challenge everything we knew about ourselves and each other. "Adam, I'm not sure this is this too unexpected?" "Unexpected," I said, trying to process his words. He smiled softly, though I could see the worry in his eyes. "I understand, Kate. I know it seemed strange, but maybe this is what we need. Something new to rekindle the fire between us." I felt curiosity, and fear began to rise inside me. What if this could actually bring something new to our relationship? But at the same time, what if it ruined everything? "I need time to think about this," I replied, feeling my voice tremble with nervousness. Adam nodded, respecting my desire to consider his proposal. It took several minutes before I could speak again. We both knew this was a conversation that would change everything. The only question was in which direction. I still couldn't shake off the anxious thoughts of Adam's proposal kept circling in my mind, stirring a wave of conflicting emotions. I remembered our life together, 12 years of marriage filled with happiness, challenges, joy, and tears. I was trying to understand if I was truly ready for such a step. Every day I looked at Adam, trying to read something in his eyes. He seemed calm and confident, as if he had no doubts about his proposal. But what if he was just hiding his uncertainty? What if he was just as unsure as I was? One evening, after a long silence, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Adam, I can't stop thinking about this. It feels so strange, almost wrong." He seemed calm and confident. Finally voiced my doubts. He looked at me with understanding, but there was determination in his eyes. "I know, Kate. It's not easy, but maybe it will give us a chance to know each other better, to expand the boundaries of our trust." "What if something goes wrong?" I asked, feeling my heart race with anxiety. "What if it ruins everything we have?" "We'll stop as soon as you feel uncomfortable," Adam replied confidently. I don't want you to feel pressured into doing anything. This should be a decision you make freely." I listened to his words. There was something reassuring in them. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was a path to something new, to a deeper understanding. But I knew one thing. I had to control the situation and be ready to stop at any moment. "Adam, if we do decide to try this, I want to set boundaries. I need to be sure that I can say no at any moment. And we'll stop immediately," I said. "Of course, Kate," he replied, smiling. "I respect your boundaries. This has to be something we both want, and if you feel uncomfortable, we'll stop right away." That's what we agreed on. But despite all the agreements, I still couldn't shake the feeling that maybe we were opening a door that wouldn't be easy to close. Adam and I decided not to postpone his proposal for too long, and started with a small step, visiting a private club in New York, which I knew was famous for its liberal views and safe atmosphere for couples. I was nervous, not knowing what to expect, but I also felt a certain curiosity. Adam seemed more relaxed, as if he already had an idea of what to expect when we entered the club, greeted us with dim lighting and soft music, creating a cozy atmosphere. People around were laughing, chatting, and seemed to be having a good time. I sat at the bar, ordered a glass of wine each, and started observing the people. After that night in the studio, Adam and I returned home in complete silence. There was tension in the air, but it wasn't the tension of fear or anxiety. Rather, it was a strange feeling, a mix of excitement and uncertainty. I looked at Adam, but his face was hard to read. He seemed to be contemplating what had happened. "How do you feel?" He finally asked, his voice soft, but I could detect a hint of tension. I pondered. "I don't know. It was strange, interesting but strange," I admitted, trying to make sense of my feelings. "And you?" Adam smiled, but it was a smile hiding many thoughts. "I feel different too. I can't say it's bad, just different." We silently took off our shoes, walked into the living room where we sat on the couch again, but this time everything felt different. Our home, usually so cozy and calm, suddenly felt too small and suffocating. "Do you think it was the right decision?" I asked, breaking the silence. Adam nodded, but his eyes remained thoughtful. "I think we need more time to understand it." It was just the first step. I realized he was right. We couldn't judge something so complex after just one experience. However, my feelings had become even more tangled. On one hand, I was drawn to something new, something exciting in this experiment. On the other hand, I was worried about the consequences. "We need time," I said, agreeing with his words. "Let's wait a bit and see where this leads." We decided to take a pause to think over everything that had happened. For the next few days, we discussed our feelings and emotions, trying to figure out what this experience meant for us. We talked about what we felt at that moment, what we liked, and what made us uneasy for the first time in a long time. Our conversations became truly deep. A week passed, and Adam suggested meeting with Jake again. I felt mixed emotions, but I decided I was ready for a new step. Jake invited us to his studio for a close art installation where he proposed to paint us in various intimate poses. "It will be something completely different," he explained. When we entered his studio again, I want to capture you as you feel right now. It will help you understand your emotions on another level." I felt a wave of excitement, and fear rises within me. Adam seemed calm, but a new world of sensation. I noticed his fingers nervously tapping on his knee. He nodded to Jake, and we began. Jake started with simple poses, his brush moving across the canvas with surprising ease and confidence. I felt the tension in my chest begin to ease. We watched as our images appeared on the canvas as if coming to life before our eyes. But gradually, the poses became more intimate, and I noticed how the mood in the room changed. The atmosphere became more tense and thrilling. I felt every gaze, every touch, as if it were the first time. Jake asked us to interact with each other, as we felt at that moment. I felt strangely open and vulnerable, but also free in this new experience. Adam remained close, his presence both calming and unsettling. We were diving deeper into this experiment, and I began to realize that it was not just a physical interaction. It was a new world of sensation, where our emotions and feelings were revealed in a new way. I could feel my confidence growing with every moment spent in Jake's studio. His brush moved smoothly across the canvas, capturing our bodies in motion, and with each touch of his gaze, my heart beat faster. It was an incredible feeling to be both the subject and a participant in his creative process. My initial hesitation gradually gave way to something new and exciting. I began to enjoy every moment, the colors, the textures, the subtle lines appearing on the canvas. It was more than just an experiment. It was an exploration of the boundaries of my own soul and body. With each passing minute, I felt the tension leave my body. I started to move with greater freedom, allowing my sensations to guide me. It was like a new dance where each step revealed unknown facets of my personality. I realized I wanted more, to continue exploring and discovering something new. I looked at Adam, and it seemed to me that he had tensed up a bit. His eyes, which had previously shone with curiosity, approval became darker, filled with concern. He was watching us with tension, his lips slightly pursed. "Is something wrong?" I asked, trying to catch his emotions. Adam slowly shook his head, but I noticed his hands, gripping the armrests of the chair. "No, everything's fine," he replied, but there was a strange note in his voice that I had never heard before. I turned back to Jake, allowing myself to dive once again into this unusual world. His presence was calming, and I felt I could trust him. But now I couldn't ignore the feeling that a new, more complex and tense dynamic had emerged between us. And Adam, for the first hour, we just talked, trying to imagine. Avoid the topic of the experiment we had agreed upon. We talked about work, future plans, and I began to feel the tension gradually easing. This place seemed strangely cozy, and I began to understand why people felt so relaxed here. As I looked around the room, my attention was drawn to a man standing by the wall. He was a bit apart from the others, but his gaze was sharp and observant. Tall, with dark hair, he watched people as if trying to read their thoughts. An artist, I thought to myself. He looked like someone who saw the world differently. "Adam, do you see that man?" I asked, nodding in his direction. Adam followed my gaze and smiled. "Go and talk to him," he suggested, nudging me gently with his elbow. "Are you serious?" I felt a slight panic rising inside me. "Yes. Why not? It's part of our experiment, right? Just start a conversation," Adam replied confidently. I slowly approached the man as I got closer. He smiled and introduced himself. "My name is Jake, and you, Kate," I replied, feeling a bit shy. "This is my husband, Adam," I added, pointing to Adam, who nodded in return. Jake turned out to be an artist, just as I had guessed. He spoke about his work and how he loved to observe people and find something special in them. The conversation smoothly transitioned to art, and life in general. Jake was charming, but there was something mysterious in his manner that caught my attention. "Do you love art?" he asked, looking straight into my eyes. "Yes. I've always been passionate about painting," I admitted. "Then you should come to my studio," Jake suggested. "I often invite the meeting people to discuss art and life." I glanced at Adam, who seemed to approve of the idea. "Why not?" I said, surprised at how easily the words came out. Jake smiled. "Great. Let's set a time. This meeting might have been just the beginning, but I already felt that we were stepping into the unknown." When we entered the studio, Adam found a large chair against the wall and settled into it comfortably, observing everything with a slight smile. I noticed how his gaze moved between me and Jake as if he was waiting for what would happen next. It was a strange, but at the same time exciting feeling, as if everyone knew their role in this unknown script. Jake continued talking about his work, but his voice became softer and deeper. I felt his hand gently touch my back, and my heart started beating faster. It seemed like everything around became quiet and insignificant, just the three of us, locked in this moment. Adam, sitting in the chair, leaned back and then watched us, his eyes burning with curiosity and something more. Something deeper. He clearly expected something to happen, and I could feel the tension building. Jake moved even closer to me, his face just inches away from mine. "Do you want to continue?" he whispered, his voice low but full of confidence. I felt his breath on my skin, and something wild and irresistible ignited within me. I didn't answer with words. My body responded for me. I leaned in, and our lips met in a passionate kiss. It was unexpected, but it felt like we all knew it was meant to happen. Jake held me tightly, his hand sliding over my shoulders, then lower, and I let him guide the movement. Adam, watching us, made no movement, but his eyes were fixed on us, following every moment, every gesture. His breathing became deeper, and I realized he was just as captivated by what was happening. Jake ran his hand through my hair, his fingers gently tracing my shoulders, and then his lips descended to my neck. I closed my eyes, savoring every moment, every touch. It was a strange and new sensation, something more than just passion. It was a feeling of freedom and complete immersion in the moment. We moved together, like in a dance. Losing track of time, Adam continued to watch, his gaze like fire burning in the dark. I knew he wanted to be a part of it, but he remained in his chair, allowing everything to unfold at its own pace. I felt Jake gently guiding me toward his easel, his hands sliding along my waist, feeling hot like fire. I looked into his eyes, and we both knew this was only the first step towards something much deeper. Adam sat in his chair. His face remained calm, but I saw his breathing quicken, his eyes shining in the dim light. He didn't try to intervene, didn't try to stop us. It was like an unspoken agreement that everyone understood. With every new movement, every touch, I felt the world around us disappear. Only Jake, his lips on mine. It was as though everything were separating. Every part of me was disappearing. Only Jake, his lips on my skin, his eyes on mine. Adam, watching every moment as if all of this had been carefully planned in advance. I realized that we had opened a door to a world from which there would be no way back. With each new movement, each touch of Jake's brush, I felt a magra coming to an end. Growing desire within me to continue, I wanted to explore this new world, this new version of myself that I was beginning to discover. I even realized that I liked this experiment, perhaps even more than Adam did. But at the same time, I noticed that Adam was beginning to feel something like jealousy. I saw how his gaze became more wary, how his body tensed. He no longer looked as calm and confident as he did in the beginning. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, moving closer to me. His voice was soft and dark. I sensed a note of concern in it. I nodded. But my thoughts were occupied with Adam. I realized that things were much more complicated than we had thought. This experiment had touched not only our physical boundaries, but our emotional ones as well. I realized that perhaps I liked this experiment more than I should have, and now I wasn't sure if Adam felt the same way. "Adam, do you really want to continue?" I asked carefully, trying to look into his eyes. He exhaled, looking at me with a new expression. "I don't know, Kate. I thought we returned home, could handle it, but now I'm not sure." Replied, we returned home after the session in complete silence. I could feel Adam was lost in his thoughts. He barely glanced at me. His face seemed tense and distant. The confidence he had shown earlier seemed to have vanished. I could sense his vulnerability and anxiety, but I couldn't understand what exactly was troubling him. I sat on the couch watching him. He began pacing nervously around the room, his arms crossed over his chest as if he were trying to shield himself from something unseen. His eyes were staring into space as if searching for an answer to a question that tormented. "Henry, what's wrong, Adam?" I finally asked, unable to hold back. "You look tense." He stopped and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It was a mix of doubt, fear, and something else I couldn't quite identify. "I don't know, Kate," he began slowly. "I'm starting to doubt whether we made the right decision by starting this experiment." I felt frustration rising inside me. "But it was your idea," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You wanted to try something new, to push our boundaries." "Now, I'm not sure it was a good idea," he interrupted, his voice full of tension. "I feel vulnerable, like I'm losing control over all of this." I sighed, realizing our emotions were beginning to drift apart. For me, this experiment had become something more significant than I had expected. I wanted more. I wanted to continue exploring my boundaries because now I felt there was something meaningful in it for me. But I could see that Adam was no longer as sure as he once was. "I've noticed you've been more nervous," I said quietly, trying not to sound accusatory. "But I thought you were interested in this too. I thought you wanted it too. I thought I could handle it," he replied, rubbing his face with his hands. "But now I feel like it's getting out of control. I don't know how to deal with it." I understood his feelings but couldn't hold back my disappointment. It seemed like we had started something important and I didn't want it to end halfway. "Maybe we need to take a break," I suggested, feeling the anxiety growing inside me. "Give ourselves time to think it all over and figure out what we really want." Adam nodded, but I could see his thoughts were somewhere far away. "Maybe you're right," he agreed. We decided to take a break. Need time to sort this out. We decided to take a break from our experiments to reflect on what was happening and how it affected our relationship. I could see that Adam felt confused and vulnerable, and I didn't want to pressure him, but inside me the desire to continue was still burning, and I hoped he could also find the strength and willingness to move forward. After a long conversation, we agreed to see a couples therapist. We both needed to understand our feelings, to figure out what was happening and how to move forward. I felt it was the right step, but I couldn't shake off the anxiety about what lay ahead for us. The therapy session was scheduled for a Saturday morning. I felt a growing anxiety inside, nervously fiddling with the edge of my coat as Adam and I sat in the waiting room, waiting to be called. Adam sat next to me, his gaze focused on the floor, as if searching for answers somewhere among the carpet patterns, when the therapist, a woman with kind eyes and a calm voice, invited us in. I felt the tension slightly ease. Adam and I took seats across from her, and I looked at her face, hoping to find some understanding. "Tell me what brought you here," she began, gently folding her hands. I felt a growing anxiety in front of her. Adam looked at me as if expecting me to start. I took a deep breath and decided to speak frankly. We decided to try something new in our relationship. I began feeling my voice tremble. We started an experiment to push our boundaries, but I feel that things have become much more complicated than we expected. The therapist nodded, inviting me to continue. "What exactly has become complicated for you, Kate?" she asked. I paused for a moment, choosing my words. "I'm drawn to new experiences," I admitted. "We started to explore, to learn something new about myself and us. But I'm afraid of losing Adam. I'm afraid that my desires and interests might destroy our relationship." Adam nodded, but his gaze remained downward. Finally, he raised his eyes and began to speak. "And I feel like I'm starting to get jealous. I'm afraid I might lose her. This experiment has become much more emotionally challenging for me than I expected. I see how much Kate enjoys it, and it scares me." I looked at Adam, realizing that he had finally opened up. There was sincerity and pain in his words that I might not have noticed before. My anxiety turned into a sense of gratitude for his honesty. The therapist listened carefully to our confessions, then smiled. Slightly, I see that both of you have a lot of emotions and feelings related to this experiment. She said, "Maybe you should try a different approach." Instead of just going through the process, maybe you should your 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 emotions and boundaries before each new attempt. I thought about her words. The suggestion seemed reasonable. Do you agree? I asked, turning to Adam. He hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Yes, that sounds more sensible, he replied. I think we need to better understand what each of us feels at every moment. The therapist smiled. Very good. This will help you keep. The therapist smiled, control of the situation, and not lose connection with each other after the session. Adam and I walked outside feeling somewhat lighter. It was like a breath of fresh air. The realization that we were not alone in our doubts, and that there were ways to cope with them. Maybe we should try meeting new people in a more informal setting, I suggested. It doesn't have to be so official and tense, just socializing, like making new friends. Adam looked at me and finally smiled. Why not? Maybe it will help us understand each other better. I nodded, feeling a sense of ease returning to me. This was the beginning of something new. We decided to move forward, but now with more awareness and a willingness to be more open with each other. A weekend in a small French town at a wine festival seemed like the perfect opportunity to relax a bit and perhaps meet new people. Adam and I decided it would be our first step after the therapy session. We both needed a change of scenery, a new perspective on our situation. The French town greeted us with warm sunlight and the aromas of fresh bread and flowers. Narrow streets were filled with people laughing and enjoying life, and the atmosphere was filled with lightness and carefree joy. It was exactly what we needed. The wine festival turned out to be a vibrant and eventful affair. We tasted different local wines, enjoyed live music, and soaked up the festive atmosphere. With exactly what we needed, the wine festival turned out to be a vibrant experience, introducing themselves as Emma and Paul. We started talking, and it soon became clear that Emma and Paul had been practicing open relationships for a long time. They were eager to share their experiences, telling us how they came to this decision and what challenges they had to overcome. Their story sounded surprisingly honest. And free Emma spoke about how they learned to understand and respect each other on a deeper level. And Paul added that their relationship had only grown stronger since they started this journey. What do you think about such an approach? I asked, feeling an unexpected curiosity. Paul smiled. The main thing is not to rush and enjoy the process. We don't set strict goals for ourselves. We just try to be honest with each other. Enjoy every moment. Emma nodded in agreement. Yes. The most important thing is openness and respect for each other's feelings. We've been through many ups and downs, but in the end, we realized that we should enjoy the process rather than trying to reach some final goal. I felt inspired by their words. They spoke so confidently and calmly, and it gave me a sense of confidence. Maybe Adam and I could also try to approach all this more calmly, without rushing and without expecting immediate results. After talking with Emma and Paul, Adam and I stepped aside to discuss their after talking. With Emma and Paul advice, I like their approach. I said they seemed so confident and content. Adam nodded, yes, they are truly inspiring. Maybe we should try not to set strict boundaries, and they all have such beautiful lives. Just enjoy the process. Say, I think I'm ready for new experiments, I replied, feeling the excitement inside me turn into a sense of ease. But let's try to go at a slower pace, enjoying every moment. Adam smiled back at me. Agreed. Let's approach this like a new adventure, without pressure or expectations. We decided to invite Emma and Paul for the weekend, to spend more time with Emma and Paul, learn more about their experiences, and perhaps begin a new journey in our own relationship. Now, I felt that we could move forward with greater confidence and understanding, enjoying each step without rushing. The next evening, we decided to invite Emma, Paul to dinner. At a small riverside restaurant, we wanted to continue our conversation and learn more about their experience. The time spent with them at the festival had left us with many questions and even more curiosity. Emma and Paul arrived with a bottle of local wine, smiling and looking relaxed. We ordered dinner, and soon the conversation flowed, as easily as it had the first time we discussed their experience, their approach to relationships, and how they dealt with the challenges that arose. Emma spoke about how she and Paul learned to be completely honest with each other, openly discussing their feelings and emotions. Trust is the foundation of everything, Emma said, looking at us with a gentle smile. If you want to open up your relationship, you have to be ready for total honesty sometimes. It's not easy, but it's the only way to maintain connection and love. Paul nodded, adding the hardest part is letting go of control and not worrying about what the other person will think or feel. When you start to trust completely, you feel the boundaries disappear. I listened carefully, understanding that they had gone through a lot to reach such a level of openness, and understanding it was inspiring, a bit intimidating at the same time. Adam and I exchanged glances, and I saw the same mix of curiosity and doubt in his eyes as I felt in mine. As dinner was ending, I felt a kind of silent understanding arise between us. I realized we were at a point where we could take a small step forward. Emotions? Adam nodded in agreement. Deal. The night began unexpectedly, he said, and I felt my heart beat faster. The night began unexpectedly, emotionally. We started with casual conversation, laughing and sharing stories, but gradually the atmosphere began to change. The interaction between us became more intense, as if we all knew exactly what was supposed to happen. It seemed like we all moved like one cohesive mechanism. Every gesture, every glance was thought out and anticipated. I felt our connection with Adam growing both stronger and more complicated. I saw him in a completely new light. He was not just my husband, but a partner in this new experience, which both thrilled and frightened me. Emma and Paul were also very open and free in their expressions. Their energy complemented ours, and I felt like we were all creating something new and unique together. But with every moment, with every touch, I realized that this was changing all of us. As the night drew to a close, we all lay on the bed, exhausted but satisfied. The room was filled with silence, broken only by our heavy breathing. I looked at Adam and saw his eyes glistening in the dim light. I realized that he, like me, understood that our relationship had now become even more complex and tangled. This night, full of emotions and sensations, made us realize that we were standing on the threshold of something big and dangerous. I didn't know whether I was ready for it or afraid of what would come next. A couple of days had passed since our night with Emma and Paul, and I was still under the impression of what had happened. Memories of their touches, of how easily and naturally we all interacted with each other kept coming back to me. I felt that this experience had opened something new in me, something I hadn't expected. I wanted to repeat it, to explore further. I began cautiously discussing it with Adam over breakfast of, what do you think about meeting with Emma and Paul again? I asked, trying to sound casual. Adam looked up from his coffee cup, his face serious. I don't think that's a good idea, Kate, he replied curtly. I felt a surge of anxiety rise inside me. Why? I thought we all had a great time. I smiled, hoping he would soften. But his face remained grim. Maybe it was fun for you, he said, I smiled, hoping he would soften. Cup down on the table. But for me, I feel uncomfortable. But for me, I feel uncomfortable. But for me, I feel uncomfortable. With the thought of another meeting, I noticed how his eyes tense, how his hands nervously fidgeted with the edge of his shirt. But what's worrying you so much? I asked, feeling my heart quicken its pace. Adam exhaled his shoulders, slumping. Jealousy, Kate. Anxiety. It was hard for me to see you enjoying this experience. It was much more challenging for me than I thought. His admission took me by surprise. I hadn't expected him to be so candid, but maybe another meeting will help us better understand our feelings. We could discuss it more openly, like the therapist suggested. I tried to gently persuade him. Adam shook his head, his expression growing even more tense. No, Kate, I don't want that. It was too much for me. I feel like I'm losing control over my emotions, and it scares me. I felt growing frustration. It seemed like we were on the brink of discovering something new that could bring us closer. Now it all seemed so far away, but you were the one who suggested this experiment, I said, trying to hold back tears. Why do you want to stop now? Maybe because I didn't expect it to be this hard, he replied sharply. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong. I just don't want to go through that. Again, his categorical refusal was an unexpected blow to me. I saw that he had shut down, that his emotions were boiling inside. I realized that perhaps he wasn't ready to continue this path. But for me, it was disappointing. I wanted to go further, to explore my feelings and desires I understand. I said quietly, feeling my throat tighten with sadness. If you don't want to, we won't repeat it. Adam nodded silently. But I knew this decision had affected both of us. We were at a crossroads, and I wasn't sure where it would lead us. Despite Adam's refusal, I couldn't shake the desire to meet Emma and Paul again. Their openness and ease had left a deep impression on me, and I wanted to experience those sensations once more. I knew Adam wouldn't support me in this, at least not right now, but my longing to relive that experience was stronger than my hesitation. After much contemplation, Gerp would support me in this, at least not right now. But my longing to relive that experience was stronger than my hesitation. I knew it was risky, but my strength is at least not right now. Gerp, I know I couldn't be certain, because I would never know for sure. This time I would come alone to better understand my feelings. Emma quickly agreed. We arranged to meet at night at their house, which was very close, just a few minutes' walk from ours. This would help avoid unnecessary attention and not raise suspicion from Adam. The appointed evening arrived. I waited for Adam to fall asleep. His mood had been dark and anxious for the past few days. I could see how much he was bothered by our previous encounter when his breathing became steady and deep. I knew he was asleep. My heart pounded with excitement as I carefully got out of bed. I tried to make no noise while closing the bedroom door and quietly walked down the hallway. I felt the cool night air on my skin, but I couldn't afford to stop. I had to follow my desires. Leaving the house, I quickly made my way to Emma and Paul's home, just around the corner, in a few short minutes. I made my way to Emma and Paul's home, just around the corner in a few short minutes. I felt silent and low because I knew the right answer was here. And I knew my best option would be. I felt a mixture of excitement and anticipation. Meanwhile, Adam woke up in the middle of the night. His sleep had been restless, and upon wake, he immediately noticed that my side of the bed was empty. Suspicion flooded him instantly. He sat up, feeling panic rising. His sleep had been restless within him. "Kate?" he called. But there was only silence in response. He walked into the hallway, checked the bathroom, the kitchen, but I was nowhere to be found. His anxiety grew. His heart began to beat faster. He started recalling our recent conversations, realizing something was wrong. Where could she be? He thought. Feeling fear clutching at his chest, Adam grabbed his phone and dialed my number, but the call went unanswered. His hands trembled and he realized the situation was spiraling out of control. He needed to find out what was happening. He quickly dressed and left the house. Emma just returned from the Paul's place with sufficient time to herself. Emma headed there at a brisk pace, determined to find out where I was and what I had planned. Adam quickly made his way to Emma and Paul's house, his heart pounding with anxiety and suspicion. He knew their house was very close, and thoughts in his head were forming an unpleasant picture. Kate might be with them, he thought, feeling fear and anger growing inside him as he approached the door. Adam noticed the light in their bedroom window. He hesitated for a few seconds before knocking on the door. Moment later, he heard a commotion inside and muffled voices. He knocked louder. Emma and Paul, realizing someone was knocking, exchanged glances. They quickly understood that it could only be Adam. "What do we do?" Emma whispered, feeling the tension growing. Kate, standing in the room, realized it was her husband in a panic. She quickly ducked under the bed, hoping Adam wouldn't find her. "Tell him I'm not here," she whispered, trying not to let her fear show. Emma and Paul tried to stay calm, though their hearts were racing. They opened the door and, trying not to show their anxiety, smiled at Adam. "Hi, Adam," Emma said as confidently as she could. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Adam looked at them closely, his eyes searching for something that would confirm his suspicions. "I'm looking for Kate," he replied curtly. "Is she here?" Emma exchanged a quick glance with Hedda. "Is she here, Paul?" But replied, "No, Kate's not here. We haven't seen her." But Adam noticed their tension. Something in their voices and facial expressions didn't match their words. He didn't believe them. "I want to come in and check the room," he insisted, his voice filled with determination. Emma and I both. Paul tried to stop him. "Adam, this is our private space. You can't just come in without permission." Paul replied, trying to sound calm, but Adam wasn't going to give up. "If you have nothing to hide, why are you so worried?" he shot back sharply. Pushing the door to enter, Emma and Paul stepped back, realizing they wouldn't be able to stop him. Adam entered the room, his eyes scanning every detail. Carefully. He checked the closet, looked behind the curtains, and peeked into the bathroom. Everything seemed normal, but his suspicions only grew stronger. He felt that something was off. Then his gaze stopped at the bed. He slowly approached it, his heart racing faster. Emma entered the room, his eyes scanning every detail carefully. He checked the closet, looked behind the curtains, and peeked into the bathroom, but he failed to see anything. Looked under the bed. There in the dim light, he saw Kate curled up in fear. For a moment, he couldn't believe his eyes. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. And then, anger took over. "What are you doing here?" he shouted, his voice trembling with rage. "You lied to me. You betrayed me." Kate crawled out from under the bed, her eyes filled with tears. "Adam, please, let me explain," she began, but his fury was unstoppable. "Explain. You lied to me, deceived me, arranged this meeting in secret." He yelled, his face red with anger. "I trusted you, and all this time you were playing a double game, Emma?" Paul stood aside, stunned by what was happening. They didn't know how to intervene, seeing how furious Adam was. Adam stood there, his face flushed with rage and hurt. His eyes were blazing with anger, and he couldn't hold back his emotions. "How could you?" he shouted, his voice trembling with fury. "We agreed to be honest with each other. We to talk about everything. And you just went ahead and lied to me. Like, my feelings don't matter at all." I tried to find the words, feeling. Ugh. And then regret overwhelming me, Adam. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I began, my hands shaking. I got caught up in wanting to try something new, to understand my feelings. I thought it might help us, but Adam wasn't listening. He was too consumed by his anger. "You only thought about yourself," he yelled. "You didn't even think about me, about how I'd feel, finding out you met them again behind my back. It's betrayal, Kate. I can't, it's betrayal." Tried to step closer, but Adam sharply raised his hand as if to tell me to stop. "No," he said, his voice cold and firm. "I can't trust you anymore. We tried to keep our honesty and openness, and you destroyed all that with your selfishness." Tears streamed down my cheeks as I tried to explain, to justify myself, but his words felt like knife wounds. "I never wanted to betray you, Adam," I sobbed. "I just didn't know how to handle these new feelings. You could have just talked to me." He continued to shout, "But instead you chose lies and betrayal. I can't live with someone I can't trust." I lowered my head, feeling utterly shattered. I realized I had lost something very important. "Please, Adam, give me a chance to make it right," I whispered, trying to hold on to him, but his face remained stony. "No," he replied firmly. "I can't be with you anymore. We're getting a divorce." Don't come back home. I don't want to see you around. Those words hit me the hardest, I realized. He was serious. But Adam, I tried to speak again, but he interrupted me. It's over, Kate, he said, his voice quiet, but finally, I don't want to hear your excuses anymore. You've ruined everything with those words. He turned and walked out of the room, slamming the door loudly behind him. I stood there, my body shaking with tears and fear. My thoughts were a mess. I couldn't understand how everything had spiraled out of control so quickly. My actions had put everything we had built together at risk. Everything that seemed so solid was now falling apart. I was left alone in the room, feeling the coldness and emptiness around me. My heart was breaking with pain and regret. I had wanted to try something new, to discover new facets of myself. Now, everything I had was destroyed. I didn't know what to do next, didn't know where to go. My world had turned upside down, and I had no idea how to set it right again.